I'm Garrison Straker. I'm 72 years old, and I've learned the hard way that the people you would take a bullet for are often the ones pulling the trigger. I sacrificed 40 years of sweat in a grease-stained auto shop to fund my son's dreams, handing over my last $50,000 so he could launch his empire. In return, his wife handed me a notice that I was no longer welcome in the family. They looked at my calloused hands and my old truck and saw a helpless, senile old man they could discard like trash. They thought they were leaving me to rot in poverty while they popped champagne. But they made a fatal miscalculation. They didn't know I held the one secret that could burn their stolen kingdom to the ground. By tomorrow morning, the woman who laughed at my grief will be homeless, and I'll be the one holding the keys to the castle. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The crystal flute in my hand felt fragile, like it might shatter if I squeezed just a fraction harder. I stood in the corner of the grand ballroom, a space so cavernous and cold it felt more like a museum than a home. My son Mitchell's home, or rather, the house his ambition built and his wife, Sabrina, decorated. The air was thick with the scent of lilies, thousands of them. It was a suffocating, cloying smell that tried to mask the reality of what we were doing here. We were burying my boy. I watched the crowd. Hundreds of people in black suits and designer dresses milled about, balancing canapes and murmuring polite nothings. I recognized maybe 5 of them. The rest were business associates, investors, sharks circling the water now that the big fish was gone. They weren't mourning Mitchell. They were calculating the market impact of his death. Garrison. The voice was soft, melodic, and entirely devoid of warmth. I turned to see Sabrina gliding toward me. She looked immaculate. Her black dress was cut to perfection, her hair swept up in a style that probably cost more than my truck. Her eyes were dry. "Sabrina," I said, my voice raspy. I hadn't spoken much in 3 days. "It's a impressive turnout." She stepped into my personal space, smiling for the benefit of the room while her eyes bored into mine with icy precision. She placed a manicured hand on my forearm. To anyone watching, it looked like a daughter-in-law comforting a grieving father. "We need to manage expectations, Garrison," she whispered, her lips barely moving. "Expectations?" I frowned, looking down at her hand on my cheap suit jacket. "I just buried my only son, Sabrina. The only expectation I have is a heartache that won't quit." She squeezed my arm. Her nails dug in through the fabric. "Let's skip the melodrama. I'm talking about the future. Your future." She leaned in closer, bringing a waft of expensive perfume that made my stomach turn. "Don't expect a penny of Mitchell's $180 million, she hissed. The number hung in the air between us, obscene and sharp. "You wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. You'd probably buy a new set of wrenches or donate it to some stray cat shelter." I pulled my arm away, the sudden movement causing a nearby waiter to glance over. "Is that what this is about? The money? Mitchell isn't even cold yet." "It's always about the money, Garrison. It was Mitchell's language and now it's mine." She straightened up, smoothing her dress. "I've already spoken to the lawyers. The estate is complicated. We're freezing all auxiliary accounts to protect the assets. That includes the handouts Mitchell was giving you." Handouts. My blood heated up, a low simmer starting in my chest. He was my son. He helped me with the rent because he wanted to. "He did it out of guilt," she corrected smoothly. "But I don't feel guilty, Garrison. I feel practical. You're 72. You live in a rent-controlled box. You don't need millions. You need a nursing home. And if you make this difficult, if you embarrass me or drag this out in court, I will find a very cheap, very state-run facility and put you there myself." She stepped back, her voice returning to a normal, social volume. "Do try the crab cakes, George. They're exquisite." She turned and floated away into the crowd of suits, leaving me standing there with my untouched champagne. I looked at her back, watching her laugh at something a tall man in a gray suit said. That was Taggart, her lawyer. They looked like partners in crime, not a widow and her counsel. I set the glass down on a passing tray. My hands were shaking, not from grief this time, but from a rage I hadn't felt in years. She thought I was a relic. She thought I was weak. I walked out of the ballroom, past the valet who looked down his nose at my ticket, and waited for my rusted 2005 pickup to be brought around. As I sat in the cab, the engine sputtering to life, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "Don't expect a penny," I repeated to the empty cab. I didn't want her money, but I sure as hell wasn't going to let her erase me. 3 days later, the reality of Sabrina's threat hit me in the produce aisle of the local grocery store. I was buying basics: coffee, eggs, a loaf of bread, and a bag of apples. The total came to $24. I swiped my debit card, the same card I'd used for a decade. "Declined," the teenage cashier said, popping her gum. "Try it again," I said, forcing a smile. "Might be the chip. It's worn out." She sighed, dramatic and loud, and swiped it again. "Declined. Put in the PIN." I punched in the numbers. Invalid transaction. A line was forming behind me. I could feel the eyes burning into the back of my neck. I have cash." I fumbled in my pocket, pulling out a crumpled 20 and some loose change. I counted it out on the belt. I was short by 80 cents. "I'll put the apples back," I mumbled, shame heating my face like a sunburn. I walked out of the store with my meager bag, leaving the apples on the counter. I drove straight to the bank, the engine of my truck knocking loudly. I marched up to the desk of Mrs. Gable, the branch manager who had known me since Mitchell was in diapers. "Garrison," she said, looking up. She didn't smile. She looked pained. "I was afraid you'd come in." "My card's dead, Martha. What's going on?" "I've got $2,000 in that checking account." She lowered her voice, leaning over the counter. "It's not just the card, Garrison. It's the account. It's been frozen." "Frozen? By who?" "By the estate of Mitchell Straker," she said, looking down at her screen. "We received a legal order this morning from the firm Sullivans, Drake, and Taggart. They've flagged your accounts for review regarding potential misappropriation of funds during the deceased's illness." "Misappropriation?" I shouted, making the security guard look over. "I never touched Mitchell's money. He sent me a check every month. That's it." "I know, Garrison. I know," she whispered. "But the order is specific. They're claiming the transfers might have been coerced. Until the audit is complete, your assets are frozen. Even your personal savings, because they're co-mingled." "How am I supposed to eat?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How am I supposed to pay rent?" "I don't know," she said, her eyes watering. "I tried to override it. The system won't let me. It's a level 4 legal hold. It's aggressive, Garrison. Someone really wants to lock you down." I walked out of the bank into the bright, harsh sunlight. I leaned against the brick wall, trying to breathe. This wasn't just greed. This was a siege. Sabrina wasn't waiting for the will reading. She was starving me out, forcing me to come crawling to her for scraps. I didn't crawl. I drove. I headed straight for the glass and steel tower of Straker Industries. I needed to see Taggart. I needed to look that lawyer in the eye and tell him to back off. I pulled my truck up to the security gate. The guard, a new guy I didn't recognize, stepped out of the booth. "Name?" he barked. "Garrison Straker. I'm here to see the legal department." He looked at his clipboard, then back at me. His expression hardened. "Turn around, sir." "Excuse me. My son built this building. I've been coming here for 15 years. "Turn around," he repeated, his hand dropping to rest on his belt. "Your access has been revoked. We have instructions to bar entry." Instructions from who? From the CEO. "Mitchell is dead," I yelled. "There is no CEO. Acting CEO Sabrina Straker," a voice called out. I looked past the gate. A man in a sharp gray suit was walking toward us, flanked by 2 large security guards. It was Taggart. He looked bored, checking his watch as if I were a minor scheduling error. "Mr. Straker," Taggart said smoothly, stopping safely behind the gate. "I tried to call you, but your service seems to be disconnected. A pity." "You froze my accounts," I growled, stepping out of the truck. The guards tensed. "You're accusing me of stealing from my own son?" "We are merely conducting due diligence," Taggart said, pulling a white envelope from his jacket pocket. He passed it through the bars of the gate. "This is a formal cease and desist. You are prohibited from entering Straker Industries property, contacting any employees, or speaking to the press regarding the estate. If you violate this, we will file for a restraining order." I snatched the envelope. "You can't do this." "Mitchell wouldn't stand for it." Taggart smirked. It was a small, tight thing. "Mitchell isn't here, Garrison, and frankly, his sentimental attachment to you was a liability. We're running a business now, not a charity for retired mechanics. Go home. Wait for the will reading next Tuesday. Until then, stay invisible." He turned and walked away. The guard waved me off. "Move the truck, old man. You're blocking traffic." I got back in, threw the envelope on the passenger seat, and reversed. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The tower reflected the sun, a giant, gleaming middle finger aimed right at me. My apartment was silent. It used to be a comforting silence, a place of rest after a long day at the shop. Now it felt like a tomb. I sat at my small kitchen table, the cease and desist letter unopened in front of me. I had $40 cash to my name. My rent was due in 3 days. I put my head in my hands. Maybe Sabrina was right. Maybe I was just a tired old man who didn't understand how the world worked anymore. Maybe I should just sign whatever they wanted and take the nursing home bed. My eyes drifted to the mantel. There was a photo there framed in cheap wood. Me and Mitchell, 20 years ago, holding up a massive base on the dock at Lake Arthur. We were laughing, sunburnt, and happy. Mitchell wasn't a billionaire then. He was just Mitch, the kid who loved tinkering with engines. I remembered something. About 6 months ago, Mitchell had come over late at night. He looked terrible, gaunt, eyes shadowed, twitchy. He had paced this very kitchen. "Dad," he had said, "Sabrina, she's changing. Or maybe I'm just seeing her clearly for the first time." He had been paranoid, checking his phone every 10 seconds. Before he left, he had done something odd. He had asked for a glass of water, and while I was at the sink, I heard the sound of tape. "Just fixing a loose edge on the drawer," he'd said when I turned around. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly on the linoleum. I walked over to the kitchen drawers. The third one down, the junk drawer. I pulled it out completely, dumping the contents. Rubber bands, batteries, takeout menus onto the counter. I turned the drawer over. Taped to the underside, tucked way back in the corner, was a small black burner phone. My heart hammered against my ribs. I peeled the tape off and pressed the power button. It had 12% battery left. It booted up. No passcode. There was nothing in the call log. No contacts. I opened the messages. There was one draft, never sent, but saved. Dad, if you found this, I'm gone. Don't trust the will. Don't trust Taggart. I hid the real directives at the bolt hole. Code 77-1985. Burn this phone. The bolt hole. I knew exactly where that was. It was what Mitchell called the old, dilapidated garage out on Route 9. It was where he built his first prototype, the one I paid for. He'd kept the lease on it for sentimental reasons, paying cash so Sabrina wouldn't see it on the books. I grabbed my keys. The drive to Route 9 took 40 minutes. Darkness had fallen, and the rain started to come down in sheets, matching my mood. The wipers on my truck screeched rhythmically. Bolt hole, bolt hole, bolt hole. I pulled off the main highway onto the gravel track that led to the garage. It was a desolate spot, surrounded by overgrown woods and rusting machinery. I killed the headlights as I approached, rolling the last 100 yards in the dark. I got out, the rain instantly soaking my shirt. I moved toward the garage door. It was an old roll-up style, secured by a heavy padlock. I reached for the lock, intending to use the tire iron I'd brought, but stopped. The hasp was cut. The metal was shiny where the bolt cutters had bitten through. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the bottom of the door and heaved it up. It rattled violently in its tracks. I pulled out a flashlight and swept the beam across the interior. Disaster. The place had been tossed, and I don't mean searched. I mean destroyed. The workbenches were overturned. The old tool chests were emptied. Wrenches and screwdrivers scattered across the oil-stained concrete like shrapnel. The floorboards in the corner had been pried up. The drywall had been smashed in with hammers. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I walked into the center of the chaos. They had been here. Sabrina's goons. They must have known about the bolt hole. Maybe Mitchell wasn't as careful as he thought. I fell to my knees, sifting through the debris of torn papers and broken glass. I was looking for anything. A document, a drive, a note. But there was nothing. Just the wreckage of my son's secret sanctuary. Looking for this? The voice came from behind me. I spun around, blinding myself with my own flashlight beam reflecting off the wet pavement outside. Two men stood in the doorway. They were big, wearing dark raincoats that didn't hide the bulk of muscle underneath. They weren't police. They were private security. The expensive, violent kind. Mr. Straker, the taller one said. He held a crowbar loosely in his right hand. Mrs. Straker thought you might show up here eventually. We've been watching the place for 2 days. Where is it? I demanded, standing up, my knees cracking. I gripped my tire iron. Where is the will? The man laughed. We didn't find squat, old man, which means you must know where it is, and you're going to tell us. They stepped inside, closing the distance. I don't know anything, I shouted, backing up until I hit a workbench. We don't believe you, the second man grunted. He lunged. I swung the tire iron, wild and desperate. It connected with the man's arm with a sickening thud, but he barely flinched. He grabbed my wrist, twisting it painfully until the iron clattered to the floor. He shoved me back, hard. I hit the concrete, the air leaving my lungs. The tall man stepped over me, raising the crowbar. "Let's start with the fingers. He'll talk." Suddenly, high beams flooded the garage, blinding everyone. An engine roared, a deep, guttural V8 sound. A massive dark sedan smashed through the half-open roll-up door, taking the metal frame with it. It screeched to a halt inches from the tall man. The driver's door flew open. A giant of a man stepped out. He moved with a speed that defied his size. He wore a faded army jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. "Rocco?" I gasped. It was Rocco, Mitchell's head of security, the man who had driven Mitchell for 10 years. The tall thug swung the crowbar at Rocco. Rocco didn't even dodge. He caught the blow with his left forearm, stepping in and delivering a devastating right hook to the man's jaw. The thug dropped like a stone. The second man hesitated, reaching for something inside his coat. Rocco spun, kicking the man's knee backward. The snap was audible over the rain. The man screamed and collapsed. Rocco looked down at me, extending a hand the size of a catcher's mitt. "Get in the car, Garrison, now." We drove in silence for 10 minutes, Rocco checking the mirrors constantly. He didn't slow down until we were 3 towns over, pulling into the back lot of a 24-hour diner. He killed the engine and turned to me. His face was scarred, grim, but his eyes were kind. "You okay, boss?" he asked. "I think so." I rubbed my bruised wrist. "I thought you worked for them. I heard Sabrina kept the security team." "She fired me the morning after the funeral," Rocco spat. "My said I was too loyal to the previous administration. She meant I wouldn't plant bugs in your apartment." "She wanted you to bug my place?" "She's terrified, Garrison. She knows the will Taggart has is garbage. She knows Mitchell wrote a new one. She's been tearing the city apart looking for it. The bolt hole was top of the list." "They didn't find it," I said, a glimmer of hope returning. "They said they didn't find squat." "That means it's still out there." Rocco pulled a flask from his jacket and took a swig, then offered it to me. I declined. "Think, Garrison. Mitchell was paranoid, but he was smart. If he sent you to the bolt hole but the document wasn't there, maybe the bolt hole was just a pointer." The message said, "Check the bolt hole. Code 77-1985. "July 7th, 1985, Rocco mused. "Does that date mean anything to you?" "That was the day we caught the base," I whispered. "The fishing trip, Lake Arthur. It was the best day of his life," he always said. My mind raced back to my apartment, to the mantelpiece, to the ugly mounted fish that Sabrina had tried to throw out a dozen times. But Mitchell insisted I keep. "The fish," I said aloud. "He didn't mean the garage. He meant the memory." "The trophy?" Rocco asked. "It's in my apartment, but if those goons are watching the garage, they're watching my place too." Rocco started the car. "Then we go in the back way. Buckle up, Garrison. We're going fishing." Getting into my apartment building wasn't hard. Rocco knew the fire escape codes because he'd installed the system for Mitchell years ago. We crept through the alley, avoided the black SUV parked out front, and climbed through my kitchen window. The apartment was dark. I moved to the living room, grabbing the mounted bass off the wall. It was dusty, its painted scales chipping. 7785, I muttered. I turned it over. The backing was solid wood. No latches, no hidden compartments. "It's sealed," I said, frustration rising. "Break it," Rocco commanded. I took the fish to the kitchen counter. I grabbed a heavy meat tenderizer from the drawer. I looked at the plastic eye of the fish, feeling a pang of guilt. "Sorry, Mitch." I brought the hammer down. Crack. Plaster and wood splintered. I hit it again and again. The fish shattered. Tumbled out from the hollow belly of the trophy was not a paper document. It was a single, heavy brass key with a tag. I picked it up. The tag read, Capital City Vaults, Box 404. A safety deposit box, Rocco said, leaning over my shoulder. That's high-end, private storage, not a bank. We have the key, I said, clutching it tight. Yeah, Rocco grimaced. But we have a problem. Capital City Vaults requires biometric ID to get into the lobby, and Taggart has flagged your ID everywhere. As soon as you scan your thumb or show your face, the silent alarm trips and the cops, or worse, Taggart's goons, show up. So we're locked out. I slumped against the counter. Not necessarily, Rocco cracked his knuckles. I used to run the security audits for that place. I know how the shift changes work. And I still have my master override card. They might have scrubbed my employee access, but they probably didn't scrub the vendor maintenance codes. He looked at me. Can you run, Garrison? If I have to, I said. Good, because tomorrow morning we're going to rob a bank. Capital City Vaults was a fortress disguised as a granite office building downtown. At 8 a.m., the street was busy with commuters. Rocco parked the car 3 blocks away. We walked, heads down. I wore a baseball cap. Rocco wore sunglasses. We stopped across the street. See that black sedan? Rocco pointed to a car idling in the loading zone. That's Taggart's private security. They're camping the entrance. They know you might come here. How do we get in? We don't use the front door, Rocco said. We use the service elevator in the parking garage, but we have to time it. The armored truck arrives at 8:15. When they open the bay, we slip in behind them. It was 8:12. Ready? Rocco asked. Let's do it. We moved quickly into the garage. The armored truck rumbled in, massive and gray. As the heavy bay doors began to roll down behind it, Rocco grabbed my arm. Go. Low. We ducked under the closing gate, rolling onto the oily concrete behind a row of dumpsters. The guards on the truck didn't see us. We crept toward the service elevator. Rocco pulled out a cloned keycard he'd prepared in the car. He tapped it against the reader. Red light. Beep, beep. Damn, Rocco whispered. They updated the firmware. What now? I hissed. I could hear the truck guards talking 20 feet away. Rocco popped the cover off the panel with a pocket knife. Old school hack. He pulled 2 wires and twisted them. Sparks flew. The light turned green. The doors slid open. We stepped in. The elevator smelled of trash and hydraulic fluid. Rocco hit the button for the sub-basement. The doors opened into a sterile white corridor. This was the vault level. Act like you belong, Rocco said. He took off his jacket, revealing a black t-shirt that looked vaguely like a uniform. You're the client. I'm the escort. We turned the corner and walked straight into the vault manager, a short, nervous man named Mr. Henderson. I knew him. He was on Sabrina's payroll. Mitchell had warned me about him. Mr. Straker? Henderson squeaked, his eyes going wide. You can't be down here. The system. I have to call security. He reached for the phone on his desk. Rocco moved. He didn't hit him. He just reached over the desk, grabbed the phone cord, and ripped it out of the wall. Then he leaned in, his face inches from Henderson's. You aren't going to call anyone, Mr. Henderson. You're going to take us to box 404, and you're going to do it quietly. Or I will explain to the board of directors exactly how much money Mrs. Straker paid you to look the other way last year. Henderson went pale. He swallowed hard. Box 404, right this way. Henderson's hands shook as he used his master key to unlock the first lock on box 404. I inserted the brass key from the fish trophy. The lock clicked. I pulled the long metal drawer out. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I carried it to the private viewing table. Rocco stood guard at the door, watching Henderson like a hawk. I opened the lid. Inside was a thick manila envelope and a USB drive. I opened the envelope. It was a document titled Codicil to the Last Will and Testament of Mitchell Straker. It was dated 6 weeks ago, notarized, signed. I scanned the pages. Gone revoke all previous bequests to Sabrina Straker, controlling interest in Straker Industries, to undergo immediate transfer to Garrison Straker, establishment of the Meredith Straker Trust. Is it there? Rocco asked. It's here, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. He did it. He really did it. Grab the drive too, Rocco said. That's the insurance. I pocketed everything. Let's go. As we stepped out of the vault room, the alarms started blaring. Whoop, whoop. Henderson triggered the silent alarm with his foot pedal, Rocco growled. He glared at the manager, who was cowering under his desk. We have about 2 minutes before the cops swarm the building. We ran. We didn't wait for the elevator. We hit the stairwell, taking the steps 3 at a time. My lungs burned. My old knees screamed in protest. But I held that envelope against my chest like it was life itself. We burst out into the alleyway, startling a stray cat. Rocco shoved me toward the car. We peeled out just as 2 police cruisers screeched to a halt at the front entrance. We need a lawyer, I panted as Rocco weaved through traffic. Not just any lawyer. We need Donovan Baxter. The retired guy? Rocco checked the rear view. He's a ghost. I know where he fishes, I said. Pier 9, every Tuesday. We found him sitting on a cooler at the end of the pier, a line in the water. Donovan Baxter was 75, wore a bucket hat, and looked like a homeless grandfather. But he was the sharpest legal mind I'd ever known. Garrison, he said without turning around, you look like you're running from the law. I am, I said, handing him the envelope. But I have the truth. Baxter put down his rod. He put on his spectacles and read the document right there on the pier, the wind whipping the pages. He read it twice. Then he looked at the USB drive. A slow smile spread across his face. It was the smile of a shark who just smelled blood. This is ironclad, Baxter said. The video testimony on the drive will prevent any claims of dementia. Mitchell locked her out completely. The reading is at 10 Rocos a.m., I said, at Taggart's office. Baxter checked his watch. That gives us an hour to get suits, get shaved, and prepare the ambush. Garrison, do exactly as I say. Don't answer her calls. Don't sign anything. Just walk into that room and let me do the talking. My phone buzzed as we were getting dressed in the back of Rocco's van. He kept spare suits, thank God. It was Sabrina. Hello? I answered, putting it on speaker. Garrison, she purred. I'm just calling to remind you about the reading, and, listen, I've been thinking. I know we got off on the wrong foot. I have a check here for $50,000, for your trouble. Just a little gift to help you settle into a new arrangement. All you have to do is sign a small waiver before the meeting starts. A waiver? I asked, buttoning my shirt. Just standard stuff. Waiving the right to contest the will. It saves everyone time. She was terrified. She wanted to buy me off before the hammer dropped. I'll see you at the meeting, Sabrina, I said, and hung up. At 9:55 a.m., I walked into the lobby of Sullivan's Drake and Taggart. Rocco was on my right, looking menacing in a dark suit. Baxter was on my left, carrying an old, battered briefcase. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Mr. Straker? You can't bring guests." "They're with me," I said, not breaking stride. We took the elevator to the 40th floor. The doors opened to the penthouse suite. We walked straight to the main conference room. Taggart's assistant tried to block the door. Rocco gently moved him aside like a curtain. I pushed the heavy oak doors open. The room was huge. Sabrina sat at the head of the table, looking like a queen on her throne. Her mother was next to her. Taggart was shuffling papers. They all looked up. "Garrison," Sabrina said, her smile tight. "And you brought help. How quaint." "Who is this?" Taggart demanded, standing up. "This is a private legal proceeding." "I'm Donovan Baxter," my lawyer said, taking a seat calmly. "I'm representing Mr. Garrison Straker." Taggart scoffed. "Baxter, I thought you were dead, or senile." "Alive and kicking," Baxter said, opening his briefcase. "Proceed with the reading, Mr. Taggart. We are listening." Taggart smirked. He picked up the document in front of him. "Very well. Let's get this over with." He began to read. It was exactly what we expected. The 2019 will. It left everything to Sabrina. The house, the cars, the cash, the company. It left me fond memories. Sabrina watched me the whole time, a gloating look in her eyes. She was already spending the money in her head. And finally, Taggart concluded, "I leave the entirety of my residual estate to my beloved wife, Sabrina." He put the paper down. "Unless there are any questions, we can move to the signing." "Just one question," Baxter said, his voice cutting through the room. "Why are you reading a revoked will?" The silence was absolute. "Revoked?" Taggart laughed. "This is the most current will on file." "On your file," Baxter corrected. "However, 6 weeks ago, Mitchell Straker executed a codicil, a legal amendment that supersedes this document." "That's a lie," Sabrina shouted, standing up. "He didn't sign anything." Baxter slid the manila envelope across the table. It spun perfectly, stopping right in front of Taggart. "See for yourself." Taggart picked it up. His hands started to shake as he read. His face went from smug to pale to gray in the span of 30 seconds. This appears to be genuine," Taggart whispered. "What does it say?" Sabrina shrieked, snatching the paper from him. "It says," Baxter narrated, "that due to irreconcilable breach of trust, Sabrina Straker is removed as the primary beneficiary. The controlling shares of Straker Industries, 51% of the stock, are transferred immediately to Garrison Straker." "No!" Sabrina ripped the paper. "It's a forgery. This old fool forged it." "We anticipated that accusation," Baxter said. He pulled a remote from his pocket and pointed it at the giant screen on the wall. "Rocco, if you please." Rocco plugged the USB drive into the console. The screen flickered to life. It was Mitchell. He was sitting in his office looking tired but clear-eyed. He held up a newspaper to show the date. "My name is Mitchell Straker," the video Mitchell said. "Today is October 14th. I am making this recording to authenticate my codicil." Sabrina stared at the screen, her mouth open. "Sabrina." Mitchell looked directly into the camera. "I know about the offshore accounts. I know you've been siphoning money. And I know about the affair with Taggart." The room gasped. I looked at Taggart. He looked like he was about to vomit. I stayed quiet because I was sick. Mitchell continued. But I won't let you destroy what I built, and I won't let you hurt my father. Dad, if you're watching this, I'm sorry I wasn't stronger, but you are. You take the company, you protect the people, and give Sabrina exactly what she deserves. The video cut to black. Sabrina stood there, trembling. She looked from the screen to me. The mask of the grieving widow fell away completely, revealing the monster underneath. You can't do this, she screamed, lunging across the table. Her fingernails clawed at the air toward my face. Rocco stepped forward, catching her by the wrists before she could reach me. He held her there, firm but calm. Sit down, Sabrina, I said, my voice steady. She slumped back into her chair, sobbing. I want my money. I earned it. I put up with him for 5 years. Read the rest, Taggart, Baxter commanded. Taggart picked up the torn paper. It says Mrs. Straker receives a conditional bequest of $20 million. Sabrina's head snapped up. 20 million? Conditional, Baxter interrupted. The condition is that Garrison Straker must deem her behavior respectful and non-hostile during the transition. If she acts out, the money goes to charity. I looked at Sabrina. You threatened to put me in a state home, Sabrina. You froze my accounts so I couldn't buy apples. Was that respectful? She stared at me, terror in her eyes. She realized her 20 million hung by a thread. I was stressed, she stammered. Garrison, please, we're family. No, I said, standing up. We're not family, we're done. I turned to Taggart. Get out of my chair. Taggart scrambled away from the head of the table. I sat down. It felt right. Here is the new order of business, I said. Taggart, you're fired. Baxter is the new general counsel. Rocco is reinstated as head of security, effective immediately. Yes, sir, Rocco said, a grin splitting his scarred face. And Sabrina. I looked at her. You have 24 hours to vacate the Willow Lane estate. It belongs to the trust now. You can take your clothes and your jewelry. Everything else stays. Where am I supposed to go? She wailed. I hear there are some very affordable apartments near the airport, I said. Don't expect a penny more until I decide you've earned it. I looked at Rocco. Escort them out. Rocco gestured to the door. Ladies, gentlemen, time to go. Sabrina tried to muster some dignity, adjusting her dress, but she looked small, defeated. As she walked out, she didn't look back. Epilogue, 6 months later, I sat on the dock at Lake Arthur. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the water. I wasn't wearing a suit. I was wearing my old flannel shirt. Donovan Baxter sat next to me, fishing. Rocco was leaning against the railing nearby, checking his phone. The foundation launched today, Baxter said. Full-ride scholarships for 50 trade school students. In Mitchell's name. Good, I said. He would have liked that. I didn't keep the millions. I took a salary for my role as chairman, enough to fix my truck and buy a nice little cottage by the lake. The rest went back into the company, into the employees, and into the foundation. I cast my line into the water. They thought they could bury me. They thought I was just an old man with no fight left. They forgot that before I was an old man, I was a father, and a father protects his own. Got a bite, Rocco called out. I reeled it in. It wasn't a record breaker, just a small sunfish. I unhooked it and tossed it back. Go on, I whispered. You're free. I watched the ripples fade, finally at peace. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.